This is topic 7, lesson 4, dividing by a whole number. So today we're going to talk about how do you divide a whole number by a decimal. So a pizza costs $5.40. Three friends are going to share it equally. How much does each spend? So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually show this first to you in pictures. Then I'm going to show you how to do this. So if I would take $5.40, I could do that by having each one of these as a whole. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, I need a little more room. 5. So there's $5, right? And I need 40 cents. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my $5.40. What I'm going to do is and I want to break them up into. I have three friends. They're each going to get an equal amount. And to do this, we're going to ungroup these. One second longer. Okay, so now I've broken them up. So now I want to put them into three groups. So I'm going to do this. One group here. 1, 2, 3. Here, actually, let me just get rid of this. And there we go. 1, 2, and then the third group. So I'm just going to keep doing these, dividing into three groups. I'm creating three equal groups. I should have picked a smaller number. Okay, what I'm going to do is we're only going to have one of these. It's going to be visible because I'm going to run. Let's just make this one here. I hope I haven't. You guys have probably seen me make a mistake or not. The top two groups we're not going to count out. We're just going to count out one of these. We're putting them out equally. Almost there. And it came out even. Yay. Okay. So, and if I'm going to take, so here's my third group. So here is one group, two groups, and then down here, here's my third group. So I'm going to count out how many I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's my whole. So I have one whole. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I have 8 of these blocks, and each of these are worth 1/10. So I have 8/10 there. So my answer would be 1 and 8/10, which if we're going to put that in money, would be $1.80. So each person, and I should have 18 in each of those two piles as well. So each kid is going to spend is going to get is going to spend $1.80 on the pizza. So that's kind of visually how I'm going to show you how you would divide decimals. So 136. So now I'm just going to show you exactly how you do that in terms of. So that's a good picture. Now, obviously, I'm not taking 136 and 5/10, and I'm not going to divide that up with the picture because that would take a long time. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to show you how to do this with uh, um, a how to do this with actual math. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to estimate. That's going to be my first thing. So I'm going to round this to uh, I could round it to 130, 135. 135 is going to be my closest one. So 135 divided by 5. I'm going to leave the divisor the same, and I'm going to change that into a number that's compatible with 5. And I know that any number that ends in 5 is divisible by 5. And 135 divided by 5 would be, let's see, it would be 27. So I know my number is going to be close to 27. You could have done something, even if you change this to 100 divided by 5 is 20, if that's easier, you'd have an idea of what it's going to be. Um, so that's our first step. Our first step is 20. I have an idea. And that gives me two things, right? It tells me, first of all, that my number is going to be in the tens. So I'm going to start my number in the tens, and that my number should be somewhere around 27. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to divide this. So I'm going to set this problem up like I would any other problem. And I'm going to divide. And I'm going to kind of ignore, you got to be really careful with this. Make that nice and neat. Well, that's really very neat, but that's neater, I guess. Um, and I am going to divide. And I'm not really going to think much about this decimal point at first. And you can do this. You can actually just either move the decimal point before you start or after you start. It doesn't really matter. I like to do it afterwards. I think it's a little easier. The really important thing, okay, so this is the big important thing with decimal division, is you have to make sure that you're putting your number over the right place in the problem, okay? Because if you don't, then you're going to have problems about where you put the decimal place. So you're going to be. This is where that neatness comes in even more so than before. So I know my number's starting in the 10th place, so I'm going to look in there first. So 5 certainly doesn't go into 1. 5 goes into 13 2 times. 10. Uh, then 10 minus 13 minus 10 is 3. 3 is lower than 5, so I'm okay. I'm going to bring down the next number, which is a 6. And 5 goes into 36 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. Minus 1. 1's lower than 5, so I know I'm okay. Now I'm going to bring down the 5. 15. And 5 goes into 15 3 times. One thing you're going to find, too, is with this decimal division, they're going to give you problems with no remainders. Because if you're going to deal with remainders a little bit differently. I'll show you in the next problem what you're going to do. But you really shouldn't end up with a remainder. And then the third thing is you place the decimal point in the quotient above the decimal point in the dividend. So now I just take my decimal point and move it up. And really, you almost don't. If you know your estimate's 27, that makes sense, right? It makes sense that that's where I'm going to put the decimal place. So now you can see why I'm telling you to be fussy about where you put your numbers. Your numbers have to go over the number because otherwise, if you put like the 2 there and you put the 7, you risk putting the decimal in the wrong place. So you've got to be very careful about where you're putting things. Okay, let me show you another one that's a little bit different. It's going to have a slightly different way of doing this. 180 divided by 8. This kind of plays into that whole you don't have um, um, remainders. Okay, so 180. I'm going to change that 18 into something that I'm going to estimate. My first thing is to estimate. I'm going to change that into 160. 20, right? 16 divided by 8 is 2. 1 0 minus no 0 is 1 0. So I know I'm going to have something around 20. So 8 goes into 18 twice. And 2 is less than 8. Bring down the 0. And so I have 20. Now, and 8 goes into 20. Let's see, 3 would be 24, right? So 2 would be 16. Okay. And now you're looking at me like, or not you're looking at me, you're looking at the screen saying, okay, Mr. Yen just said we weren't going to have remainders. What do we do? Okay, so what we can do is, and we kind of did this at the beginning of the year. You're going to put a decimal place here because every number has a decimal place at the end. You're going to put a 0 in here because you can add a 0 onto the end of any number like that, and you don't change the value of the number if you put a decimal point and a 0, right? And now I'm going to bring down that 0, and 8 goes into 40 5 times. And now remember the third step, bring up the decimal place, and then compare. 22.5, 22 and 5 tenths is pretty close to 20. So that seems like it's a very, and you can always multiply 22.5 times 8, you should get 180. Okay, so that is how you divide a decimal by a whole number. So why don't you try it? Why don't you try 45 and 600ths divided by 3? Okay, how do we do? So let's see. I hope I gave you something that's, it should be. You know how I know this is divisible by 3? 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 6 is 15. So this should work out. Divide by 3. And I'm going to do for an estimate, I'm actually going to do 45 divided by 3 is my estimate, and that would equal 15. So I know my answer is going to be somewhere close to 15. So 3 goes into 4 one time. 1's less than 3, so I'm okay. Going to bring down the 5. 3 goes into 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. Then I'm going to bring down the 0. And then I'm going to put a 0 here, right? And then I'm going to do, you can, if you want to, you don't have to do that step. But if you want to, it's kind of for most people, it kind of makes things a little easier. And then a 6, bring down the 6, and 3 goes into 6 2 times. Then I'm going to do my last step. Take that decimal point and bring it up into the answer. And that is how you divide a decimal by a whole number. Okay, thank you for listening.